You know, we have this system, a system built with the absolute best intentions, and it saves countless lives. But what happens when we take that brilliant system and apply it to a completely different kind of animal? Well, the results can be pretty devastating.
And we all know this model. We love it. A dog needs a new home, a shelter steps in, and a new family adopts them into what we call a forever home. It's this incredible cycle of resilience, of second chances, and for dogs, it works remarkably well.
But here's the catch. When we try to apply that exact same blueprint to parrots, the evidence is starting to show that we're not just getting it a little bit wrong, we might actually be causing compounding, lifelong harm.
So let's break down exactly why this is happening. What we're looking at is a fundamental mismatch. It's really a tale of two very different species being forced through the same one-size-fits-all process.
This right here, this visualizes the whole problem perfectly. Our adoption system is that round hole. It was designed from the ground up for the round peg of a domestic dog. A parrot? That's a square peg. And we keep trying to force it in, but you just can't do that without causing damage. Let's dig into why.
Okay, first up, domestication. This is huge. Dogs have had 15,000 years to co-evolve with us. That time has shaped them to be flexible, to read our cues, to adapt to our world. Parrots, on the other hand, they're basically wild animals living in our homes. They have all their wild instincts fully intact.
And then, look at the timeline. A dog's lifespan, 10 to 15 years. It fits pretty neatly into a major stage of our own lives. But a parrot, we're talking 25, 60, sometimes more than 80 years. They completely outstrip our own life stages. This creates what researchers call a lifespan asymmetry, and it makes a single forever home statistically almost impossible from the get-go.
Now, let's talk about how they bond. A dog's genius is its incredible ability to form new attachments. They can love a new family just as deeply as the last. But parrots, they form these deep, selective, partner-specific bonds. For a parrot, losing their chosen person isn't just a change of scenery. It's a trauma, almost like a human losing a spouse.
And all of this comes to a head in how they handle stress. Now, don't get me wrong, shelters are stressful for dogs, but the research shows they're resilient. Most adapt really well once they're in a new home. Parrots, though, have a super high stress reactivity. Instability can trigger this cascade of serious physical and behavioral issues, and they recover from it incredibly slowly, if they ever fully do.
Okay, so we've established this deep biological mismatch. Now let's look at what that actually means over a parrot's very long life. Because these consequences, they aren't just isolated incidents. They add up. It's a compounding crisis.
Just look at this number. 5 to 10. That's the average number of homes a companion parrot will live in during its lifetime. This isn't a rare thing that happens to a few unlucky birds. For parrots, instability is the norm, not the exception. And every single one of those moves is a huge hit to their well-being.
And that harm just accumulates. You see, it doesn't reset with each new home. The initial stress of the first move becomes heightened stress in the second. By the time they get to home number 3, you often see serious behavioral problems emerge, like feather plucking. That spirals into chronic stress, which can lead to actual illness. The trauma just compounds over and over again.
And as if all that weren't enough, this whole tragic cycle is playing out against a really terrifying backdrop, a critical shortage of veterinarians who actually know how to treat these animals.
I mean, this chart just says it all, doesn't it? When a dog or a cat gets sick, there's about a 90% chance you can find a vet. For a parrot, that number absolutely plummets to 20%. So think about it. Just when a parrot is at its most vulnerable, sick, and stressed out from being moved, the specialized medical help it desperately needs is basically nowhere to be found.
So when you put all of these pieces together, it becomes painfully clear this isn't about blaming bad owners or pointing fingers at failing shelters. This is a total systemic failure that goes way beyond anyone's good intentions.
So let's just recap the evidence we've seen. You've got the massive lifespan mismatch, their essentially wild nature, their unique partner-specific bonding, the high-stress reaction, and the terrifying scarcity of medical care. On top of all that, their needs are just not intuitive. You can't just wing it with a parrot. Every single point here screams structural mismatch.
And this quote from the research, this is the absolute key takeaway. We have to shift our focus. The problem isn't the well-meaning people working inside a broken system. The problem is the system, the inherited model that we've just been using for decades without ever stopping to question if it works.
So, where do we go from here, right?
If the current model is fundamentally flawed, then we have to start rethinking a parrot's future from the ground up. The entire goal has to change.
Ethically, we actually have a guide for this. It's called Birch's Precautionary Principle, and it basically says that when you have strong evidence pointing to potential harm, which we clearly do, you have a moral duty to act to reduce that risk. You don't wait around for perfect data when you already know that the current path is causing real damage.
And this is the fundamental shift in thinking that's required. Our primary objective can no longer be about just finding the next home. It has to become about creating and ensuring lifelong stability and continuous support, even if that looks completely different from what we think of as adoption.
And that leaves us with this final, really critical question. If the whole idea of a single, forever home is a promise we often can't keep for an animal that can live for 60+ years, then what does genuine lifelong care actually look like? What new models, what new kinds of support systems do we need to invent to truly meet their needs? That's the conversation we all need to start having right now.